It's Saturday, time for another episode of Beyond Garnet. Let's get creative.
Maybe too intense for some listeners, may be unsuitable for sensitive people, may cause dizziness, may cause drowsiness, may cause excitability. Safety goggles may be required for listening. Take with food, avoid contact with skin, avoid extreme temperatures, and store in a cool, dry place. This is not legal advice, must be present to win. Contents under pressure may contain small parts. Listen at your own risk.
Hey everyone, thank you for joining me for another episode of Beyond Garnet. I have a pretty special guest here for you today. You know him as Detective Robert Gorin from Law & Order Criminal Intent, Wilson Fisk, or the Kingpin on Daredevil, and from films like Full Metal Jacket, Men in Black, The Magnificent Seven, and Jurassic World. Actor-director Vincent D'Onofrio. Hey Vincent, thank you for joining me today.
Hi, Lana, how are you?
I'm great. Thank you for taking a little time out of your day to spend with us. We appreciate it.
Yeah, of course.
All right. So here in Cincinnati, I have to tell you, when I go to networking events or anything with other directors, you are like on the top of everybody's dream list of actors they want to work with. So
that's nice.
Yeah, so I'm excited that all the actors here are going to get to hear the podcast and hear all your advice and really cool things that you've been through.
Yeah, well, anything you want to ask me about acting and about process, if you don't think it's too boring, I'll answer your question. Can I first say hello to your father, Dennis?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Sure.
Hey Dennis, how are you, man? I know you're out there somewhere. Want to say hi.
Thank you. That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So here in Cincinnati, what I run into when I'm casting for projects is a lot of actors won't train. And it drives me insane. I'm talking about a lot of independent actors. And I think it's imperative. It's insane not to train as an actor. So I want to know what your take is on how imperative it is for an actor to train.
Well, I agree with you. I think I don't know what they're doing if they're not using some kind of knowledge, some kind of background, some kind of foundation to stand on when during the building of a character and the analysis of a script. And I find it hard to believe that they could actually execute a performance, like a real performance, not a posing kind of planned thing where they look at themselves in the mirror and practice lines and practice affect and practice how to say a line over and over again. That's not acting. I mean, there are many techniques of acting. I'm a method actor, but in the end, I use many different techniques, from classical to, basically everything I use is based on the studies and the system of acting that Stanislavski came up with.
Yeah.
The first 10 years of Stanislavski is what people call method acting, and then after that he changed a lot of what he taught and what he expected from his troupe of actors in Russia, and they eventually called it the Stanislavski system of acting. And a woman named Sonia Moore wrote many books about it in the late 70s and 80s. She was an actual student of his. When I met her, she was in her 80s, pushing 90, I think, and she had a school in Manhattan called the American Stanislavski Theater Company.
Yeah.
And I studied with her for a long time, for 3.5 years, and did plays with her. And when we did plays, we would travel and do plays, and we would, the plays had to be done with the Stanislavski system of acting. It was very strict that we used the technique. It was very important that we used the technique that she was teaching, and we would do, Russian plays from Russian writers. We would do American plays, we basically a lot of the classics, and so when it comes to actors saying they can act without technique, I find that to be odd. What happens usually which is most common with the great actors out there, the men and the women, the ones that just make our jaws drop. They're using a combination of what they've learned. You know, they take a bit from here and there, and but mostly it's all, like I said, based on Stanislavski. I mean, that's my opinion. You know, that's my answer to that. I think it's anything less is silly.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
What do you think is the most challenging aspect of being an actor?
I think it varies. The more experience you have, I think when you first start as an actor, there's so many personal things you need to learn, and you need to learn how to deal with rejection. You need to learn how to deal with failure, and you know, the failure of execution. You have to learn how to think of everything as an experiment, that nothing is set in stone. You have to understand that these are all kind of like, what I'm listing is all kind of like personal things that actors commonly have to struggle with. And,
right.
As people, not just as actors, but as people that are putting themselves out there to be artists. You know, this is what comes with that. There's also the idea that it takes a long time, it takes many years, but you realize that your struggle to achieve 100% in your art, no matter what it is a constant struggle that you're always going to have for your whole life, as long as you are an artist and you're executing whatever kind of art form you do. That the knowing that you can never achieve 100%, yet you struggle to achieve it all the time, and that struggle is what the audience gets as your performance, or your painting, or your song, or your whatever it is. The struggle to achieve 100%, knowing you never can really achieve it, is what the audience ends up with. And that's a big realization for an artist, because it's something that all of us struggle with. I don't want to use the word struggle too many times, but yeah. it is a struggle. It's to achieve perfection is impossible in art. Yes. The point is that the execution, the allowing yourself to fail, the idea of pushing yourself so hard that whatever that is what your performance ends up to be. It's a big deal. It's a big deal, because once you realize that, you know that that you are actually moving forward. You are actually delivering performances, and they're legitimate performances because of that struggle. Sorry, there's those kinds of things that as a person, as people, as a man or a woman, you have to, you know, there are things like rejection and accepting yourself for who you are, and not and struggling with self-worth and all those kinds of things. Those are things that, you know, you eventually you're able to deal with them better, but they all come on very strong as a young artist.
I think this thing I see the actors around here struggle with the most is the rejection of not being cast. And
well, they should know that I get rejected too, still to this day.
Yeah, see, there you go. These are the things that I think that they need to hear that they don't think about.
No, they need to know that, sure, I get offered things, but if there's something out there that I really want to do, and I'm not the first person that they go to, I could be the second or the third person or the fourth person that they go to. Or that they may not even be considering me at all. And that I really have to put an effort out there to convince them to change their mind. And, you know, that doesn't always work out, you know? Yeah. And you have to learn how to it's like like, if you have a job and you get a paycheck and you have rent to pay and stuff like that, you have to think of it as an audition. Like you go to the bank, you make your deposit, and you leave, and you hope that it's that you stay in the green. That's the only thing you can hope for, and sometimes it works out, sometimes it doesn't. But you'll be making another deposit soon, hopefully.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's really how you have to think of it. You have to let it go. You have to, rejection is the big thing, and you cannot take it personal. One of the things that I tell my students these days, the young ones especially, like when I teach at the Strasberg Institute in New York, usually the students range from like 18 or 19 to in their mid-20s. Sometimes there's older students as well, but it's mostly when I'm dealing with the young people. One of the most important things that I can leave them with is that when it comes to what we're talking about right now at this moment, is that these days it's a lot easier, believe it or not, than it was when I was a kid. When I was a kid, you either had to be fat or skinny. You either had to be extremely ugly or gorgeous. There was no in between. You didn't get parts if you weren't one or the other. And that was really sort of what it was like. But these days, because we're all, the world is becoming so much more woke. To use now an old term. That people are called out for shaming people and stuff like that. Things are getting so much better. Women are being accepted in the ways that they always should have been. That people don't have to be beautiful. They don't have to be super ugly or they don't have to be super beautiful. People just have to be people now. And if you're good at what you do, you can get a job. If you think that if you're a guy and you think you're a plain Jane, if you're a girl and you think you're a plain Jane, you can still work in this day and age.
Right. And
you can become as successful as anybody else these days, and I think that's a wonderful thing. So it's a pretty useless thing to be judging yourself. That you should be putting all of that energy into your technique, into your performances, into your studies. You should not be judging yourself. There's no need for it anymore. And anybody that does judge you is just a loser, and they're not going to last long. It's a big deal.
Yeah,
it
is. It's
because
huge.
young people judge themselves in a heavy way.
Yeah. Absolutely. They do. I watch the actors around here. I watch them quit because they get so down on themselves. And I don't know. I wish a lot of people were more positive. When I fail, I try now. I wasn't very good at it before, but I'm getting better at trying to find failure. Where's the lesson so I can improve? It's hard. It's a hard mindset to get into.
It is a hard mindset. I remember, I wasn't able to do it on my own. I did it with the help of my peers and teachers. Yeah. Who reached out, who put their hand out to me. Fellow actors and like I said, teachers that, their hands outstretched to me saying, look, you're thinking about things wrong, so people just need help. I mean, that's why I teach. I'm actually teaching a class in Vancouver. I teach it tomorrow. I'm doing an intensive 6-hour class with a local studio here. It's like the Railtown studio, and it's like one of the best acting studios in Vancouver. And I'm going to do a few classes there. Tomorrow is what they call a peer group, which is the older, more experienced working actors. I'm doing a class with Vincent. It's a 6-hour intensive course, and then later on, as I'm here, I'm going to teach some of the younger students as well. But this is why I do it, because I have, I can be that hand reaching out to them,
Yeah. I was fortunate to study with Silvana Gallardo for about 6 years in my late 30s. She passed when I was about 40. But her thing was always teaching you that you are enough, you are enough, you are enough constantly. She was telling people that every intensive that she would teach. I didn't study with her to be an actor. I studied acting with her so I could be a better director.
Nice.
Yeah. So, but that was when my mindset really started changing, was when I studied with her.
Yeah.
Yeah. So. Now, another thing that actors struggle with here is learning their dialogue. Are you great at memorizing dialogue?
I'm not great at it. I mean, I'm not, I don't have a photographic memory or anything like that.
Yeah.
But I just put in the time, and it's all about putting in the time. Look, I say this all the time in my classes. I think that actors, and I'm including myself in this, are lazy by nature.
Yeah.
and it's really a bummer.
Yeah.
I think all artists are lazy by nature, to tell you the truth. And I think that there's this whole, we make up a million excuses to not put in the time, but it's everything. You're fooling yourself if you don't just put the hours in. You cannot show up on a set, any set or any stage, if you're not putting in the hours. When you're not at work, study it. You have to do it. You are not a legitimate actor unless you do it. Everybody does it differently. The way I do it is after familiarizing myself with the complete story.
Yes.
Where I don't even consider my character. This I learned in script analysis when I was younger, is to read the script and not ever consider my character until I understand the story fully. Because the minute you start considering your character, you start to see it from a certain perspective, and that alters the structure of the story. So you need to be able to take yourself out of it and read the story as a whole, and read it a few times so that you become familiar with the story, not just once, not just twice, but until you truly understand the whole story. Because a well-written story is like a painting. It's like the composition of the story, the structure of the story is everything. And you need to know where your character fits in that composition. And you can't know that until you examine the painting in its full, the script in its full. And so if you play a lot of supporting roles and you're a character actor like me, you have to know, if you're a little splash of yellow in the corner, you need to know how much yellow that should be. If it's too little, it changes the composition. If it's too much, it changes the composition. So you really need to realize what the story is in full first. And so that's what I do. And then I start, then I start to look at it through the eyes of my character. And then that influences, that immediately choices start coming up. Sometimes, most of the time, the first choices are usually the ones I end up using. But sometimes they change because I miss things. I don't understand things as well as I should have. And then I get enlightened by either somebody else in the story or somebody, or the director or the writer or maybe some of the other actors. Or maybe I just become enlightened just because I missed something. And so choices start to happen, and so that's the beginnings of the development of my character. I could go on about that, but to go back to the learning the line, when all that work that I was just talking about is said and done, and that can change sometimes too, during the actual execution, the actual shooting of the movie or the play, but I simply read it over and over again, the scene.
Yeah.
I read the scene over and over again, and then I get my phone. These days, phones are like, our computers we carry in our pocket.
Right.
I used to use a tape recorder, but now I use the simple recording thing that an iPhone comes with.
Yeah.
No special app or anything.
Yeah.
And I out loud, I say the name of the character and I say the line. I do that with everybody's character, including my own, through the whole scene. And I do it in a monotone voice, my lines especially. I do not act when I'm recording it. I do it monotone, completely monotone, because I do not want to get locked into an emotion or a performance of any kind when I'm doing memorization, because you just never know how things are going. You don't want to have anything planned like that. And so in a monotone way, I record everything, and then I start to listen back to it. And then I pause when I hear my cue. I pause the phone, and I say my line, and then I play my line back in a monotone voice, and I do it like that. And when I think I'm doing well, and I'm getting it down, then I re-record it, again, the scene, without my line. And I leave, I read it silently. While I'm recording, I'll read everybody's line, including mine, but when I come to mine, I read it silently so that I allow enough time for me to say it when I'm playing it back. So then, once I've done that, I start again, and when my cue comes up, there's this blank space. I say my line, and that's fine. And that's how I memorize lines. And if I have a monologue, a long monologue, I will learn it. I don't use my tape recorder, my recorder on my phone for that. I just use the paper. I use the page, and then I divide it. I learn it in beats. I'll use a pencil, and I'll read it in a monotone way. Sometimes I'll say it out loud, the words out loud, but without any accent. And I can clearly start after a while to see the beats in it, and I will use a pencil to slash the beats. One beat ends here, and then the next beat and starts there. And I'll use a pencil to mark that. And then that, by the time I've done that, the words are becoming familiar, and then I'll just simply try to memorize the words in a way anybody does it. And then once I've memorized the words, I'll either play catch with somebody back and forth, like I'll stand 5 feet from somebody and throw a ball or a water bottle, or I'll bounce the ball against the wall if I'm by myself. And the idea is you never stop it from moving. You don't catch it and stay your line. You have to be saying your dialogue without acting as the ball comes into your hand and as it leaves your hand immediately, back and forth, you never pause, and you never, and that's the best, most efficient way to learn a monologue. By the time you've learned it with a ball coming in and out of your hands and back and forth from somebody else or back from a wall, by the time you get to set, you've got it. I mean, there's no way you'll drop it. But having said that, by the way, everybody panics about going up on their lines. I mean, going up means when you forget a line.
Yeah.
Everybody freaks out about that. When you're doing a play, first of all, you should never freak out about going up. It's just a normal thing. Everybody goes up. Everybody. I don't want to name any names, but the best of the best of the best go up.
Sure.
Everybody.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so the idea is to not panic. The idea is to actually do the opposite and just rest. Just stay calm, and it will come. It's either that or you'll be fed the line by somebody else. If you're on stage, sometimes you'll just get fed the line. And the audience never realizes it or anything. I mean, personally, it's never happened to me, and I hope it never does, but I've seen it happen, and I've helped other actors out on stage for it and given them their line. But most of the time, you don't. If somebody doesn't know their line, you're so wrapped up in the scene that you don't know their line either. Which is like, oh shit, and then everybody's in trouble.
Right.
And then they have to be fed it from off stage. But this is a very common thing, and with film or video these days, it doesn't matter. You go up, you start again, do whatever you need to do. It's not. I've learned. The way that I've learned to act over the years, it doesn't really, forgetting lines is not really, it's very difficult to do because of the style of acting that I do. And,
right.
And it's, and the process and the hours of time that I put in studying and the process that I use and the time I put in learning my lines, it rarely ever happens. But if it does, I will rest. I will just simply, in the most literal way, rest my body, calm myself down, and it will come.
I love this. This podcast is like an audio class for actors. It's great. You're giving so much amazing information. They're going to love it. I just know they will.
Good.
So, yeah. So you also direct as well.
Yeah.
And by the way, The Kid is on my tomorrow night schedule. I'm going to watch that. I love Westerns, so.
It came out pretty good. I think you'll enjoy it.
Yeah. How do you enjoy directing compared to acting? I know it's two different animals, but.
I like it. Every time I direct, I learn something. Because I didn't go to film school, so it's a different, I feel like I'm in a different situation. I can, I'm able to get films made because of my career.
Right.
Of course, I wish it was easier than it is, but it's still hard.
Yeah.
It's hard to get a film made, period, for anybody. But I feel like I'm learning each time, and I'm learning basically what not to do, and rather than what to do, and when you're dealing with other people's money, there's a lot of constraints put on you, and there's a lot of people stick their nose into the business of storytelling because they put up the money.
Right.
So actually, they should have the right to say whatever they want, but that can become confusing for the actors, and it can be confusing for the director, and all. It can become confusing for all the artists that are on set rather than the finances.
Right.
But so you have to learn how to navigate all that stuff because, they're filmmakers too. Everybody involved, even the finances, you can't get a film made without the money. And so they have the right to say whatever they want,
Yeah.
So, there's things that I learn each time. And I think that, I think one day I'll be able to, direct a film that I'll be, truly happy with. And so I'm not, I have something in development now. The writer is writing away, and it's going to take a long time to write it because it's a big project, and she's in Los Angeles writing it, and it'll probably be about 6 months from now before the script is ready, but that'll be the next movie that I direct. But my partner Sam Maydew and I, we are, we're collecting intellectual properties, and we're seeing, the one that's being developed now, the one that's being written now is another one of my stories. Like The Kid, I came up with the whole story myself.
Right.
And so and then I hired Andrew Lanham, who's an incredible writer, to write it. And so that's how I usually do things. I think of the story and the structure myself, and then I hire somebody to some talented person to write the screenplay.
Sure.
And so that's what's happening now with the new one. But there's also the ideas. There's a lot of amazing things that happen in the world. So it's important to look at all the properties out there, the intellectual properties, and if you have a good agency, they usually have a department that handles all that stuff, and they represent writers and novelists and journalists, and so there's, I may direct something from one of those one day too, but I like it. I like directing. It's a learning process, you know?
Right.
I like it.
Yeah.
It's like learning to play the ukulele. You have to just keep at it.
Yeah. I am so musically challenged. I really am.
I'm playing very quietly. I have this electric ukulele that I travel with because when it's unplugged, it's very quiet.
Yeah.
And so it's actually in my arms right now.
Oh, very nice.
Yeah. But that's why I travel. But the ukulele is such a fun instrument because you actually don't have to play any ukulele songs on it. You can play anything on a ukulele.
Yeah.
And so that's my mission, to learn everything I can that's not a ukulele song on a ukulele.
Oh, look at that. I love it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Very cool. So I should try that because I'm just so terrible. I tried guitar lessons and it was terrible.
You just have to get yourself a ukulele. They're like $80, $100. Get one and then go on YouTube. And there's a couple of them, a couple of women and a couple of guys that are just great teachers. And in 5 lessons, you can be playing the ukulele.
You know, I have a 17-year-old niece. She can play any instrument. You hand it to her and she can play it.
Amazing.
It blows my mind. Yeah.
I know.
Yeah.
I know. My son is, my youngest, my 12-year-old is like that. He's piano, guitar, and it's amazing.
Yeah. It's insane. Yeah. So I did a lot of research I was looking for little tidbits for when I was going to talk to you. Now, character from The Cell scared the shit out of me, just so you know. So you did your job, right? Right. Was that a really challenging role for you? It seems like it would have been really challenging.
Yeah, it was. It's a long time ago, but I'll tell you what's left inside me from that project.
Sure.
Is that I developed a really good relationship with the director Tarzan. And at that time, a lot of the mavericks in Hollywood, a lot of the directors they used to call mavericks, but they were truly like independent from the system, from the typical, kinds of movies made. They made their own conceptual things.
Yeah.
Like Robert Altman, guys like that.
Sure.
And Tarzan, they were getting, those guys were going away or dying, And then Tarzan came along. He was like this visual artist, and so it was like a big deal to me to work with him, to get to know him, and I fell in love with the guy. I think he's like amazing, and he had this kind of idea to, with Jennifer Lopez, put Jennifer Lopez in a movie, which is sort of an experimental, mind creep,
Mm-hmm.
It was like this crazy way to look at a serial killer. And we shot, and there's a lot of stuff that's obviously couldn't make it into the movie because they were like, there's no way they're going to finance the Jennifer Lopez film, but you don't see Jennifer Lopez until 40 minutes into the movie.
Right. Right.
But because that's what I think Tarzan's original cut was, something like that. But he managed to do a different cut on his own without them taking it over too much. And so I remember a lot about the relationship with him, and I remember early on, I said to him that there was some of the things didn't make sense in the original script, and that I would have to figure out the history of the killer, his kind of from being a child, his case study.
Yes.
Like I would have to figure out a case study for him and what makes him the way he is, and then from that's going to this was the discussion that I had with Tarzan, and I had to know if he agreed with me, because if he didn't agree with me, then he had completely different ideas then that wasn't going to work. And so early on, him and I would sit down and talk about this a lot, and I would have to, and I was doing lots of research, and so the case studies that I figured out, that I put together a few different case studies to make this character's life, and those then influence what goes on in his mind. It would alter some of those scenes a bit from the original script because it actually has to fit the psychology of the character,
right,
for it to make sense. And so the cool thing about Tarzan is he gave me that freedom, and he was on the same page with me, and not to mention added to it once he understood the psychology of it, and added to it with the visuals and what would then happen, and obviously the costumes and the special effects, everything just started to form into this amazing thing, and the idea of being able to play a character and also play the image of the character in his mind was a fantastic kind of opportunity.
It was so trippy.
Yeah, I mean, that's Tarzan. It's like he's amazing. And so what that does is that requires a lot of research and a lot of stuff that you wouldn't normally read about or hear about, or I had some specialist conversations with law enforcement on the phone, retired guys who had dealt with people like that, and you hear stories and then the pictures that you see and the information that you find out, they affect you. They become nightmares. And, yeah, and so some of that stuff I kind of wish I didn't know now,
Right.
But because it makes me just be more concerned about the world, but that there are aspects of that, of my process to make that movie that I could do without. But
sure.
It left. So there's a few different things that movie left me with. One is some nightmares, and the other one is this kind of incredible relationship with Tarzan. And Tarzan and I actually ended up working. We did this show called Emerald City, like a modern version of The Wizard of Oz for NBC. Yeah, which was so much fun.
Oh, I bet. So I have sort of a two-part question about your character, Jack Horn from The Magnificent Seven. Okay.
Oh, yeah.
First question, first part of the question, really easy. How much of that beard was real?
The whole beard was real. There was no fakeness.
Oh, that's awesome. That was such an epic beard.
Yeah, it was good. My beard did well.
Yeah.
It was like a different person on my face. But it was like,
And I love the voice.
Yeah,
How did the voice?
All my stuff. That's all. That was not in the script. That's something that I came up with that I didn't throw at. The only one I think that there was two people, my two friends, Ethan Hawke and Chris Pratt, who I'm very close to, the two of them.
Yes.
And they were the only two that knew that I was going to do that voice. The director didn't know, Antoine, but I trusted Antoine, so that's why I didn't tell him, because I adore him and I know that he's a super talent. And so on the day, the first scene, the first line that I had was, I'm going to say a little prayer for you. I said to one of the bad guys, and I said, I said it in the high-pitched voice, and there was definitely a pause on the set.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I watched the producers gather around the chair of the director, and there was a little bit of discussion, and Antoine, just pushed forward,
Yeah.
because he knew it would work,
I loved it.
It was, I think it was a good idea.
Yeah.
You have to have guts when you're an actor sometimes. You have to be ready for things to stop and for everybody to question what you're doing. The bigger the chance you take, Men in Black was like that too with Barry Sonnenfeld. Barry had asked early on, before Barry gave me the script to Men in Black. We had a friend, Stacy Scher, who we both knew, but I had never met Barry. And Barry sent Stacy to me to ask if I would be interested in doing a part in this next movie he was going to do. But, he wanted to make sure that I wasn't going to talk to him about acting.
Okay.
And then I read, and then I said, yeah, of course, whatever. I'd love to do. I'd seen Get Shorty, and I thought that Barry was amazing, and I knew his history too as a cameraman and stuff. I thought he was like an incredible talent, and some of his camera work has altered the way things are shot to this day.
Yeah.
Barry, and so the idea of so I get the script and I read the script and it's it's Men in Black, and there's an alien, and he gets into a human's bug, a giant bug who gets into a human's body, and I'm reading this thing and I'm like, I can't talk to the director about it. Are you kidding me? Like, but then as I did my work and figured it out, how I was going to walk, and I figured out I combined George C. Scott and John Huston's voice together for the voice of the character, and then I used these knee braces to lock off my legs and I taped off my feet so I couldn't move properly, and so I kind of figured this whole thing out. So it wasn't until the first day of shooting until Barry saw what I was going to do that day, and he's another one that there was a pause on set for sure.
Yeah.
And during rehearsal, and but guy like that, he just went with it. It was amazing. I was so you have to have guts sometimes, and you have to have people behind you super talented people behind you that are going to support you.
I love the walk. I thought the walk was crazy. Do you have any hobbies?
I play my ukulele.
Yeah.
And I don't really have hobbies. No, not anymore.
Do you collect anything?
I mean, I do take little pieces of stuff from each project that I do.
Yeah.
Like there's something, if I find something, it's usually something odd and something very particular that I'll keep from everything that I've done. And my office is full of it.
Yeah.
But that's the only, I don't really collect anything else. I mean, I do like hats, but I don't have a lot of them. Yeah.
Now, was there a defining moment for you when you knew you wanted to be an actor? I know you were a bouncer or something before you became an actor, right?
Yeah, I was a bouncer and a bodyguard, yeah. When I was a kid.
Yeah.
My dad was always involved in theater. He was an interior designer by trade. My parents were divorced when I was very young. But when I would see him, he was usually involved in some kind of community theater. And so I would help build sets and do lights and sound and stuff for plays when I could, when I was with him, and so he was really into all that, and so that was like my introduction to the whole concept of storytelling and in front of an audience, and it was because of my dad. So then eventually, I knew that I wasn't going to be into sports. I knew I wasn't great academically, and I could always, from being a very young age, I was able to draw. I don't know why. I don't know how. I never took an art class or anything like that, but I've always been able to draw and paint, but especially just draw, and so the art, that I kind of was like, into art, and so this was like, oh wow, I realized through my father that the theater was art too, that storytelling is art too, and I think that opened my mind up to what art is and the many different forms of it. And that became my interest. I was into certain kinds of painters and musicians and poetry, and I think that as a young man, I became fixated with film and acting in film and theater, and I was, right after high school. I didn't go to college. Right after high school, I traveled across the country with one of my best friends at the time, and just the two of us, and worked around the country and did odd jobs, and lived in a Toyota Corona,
Yeah.
and just did that kind of thing. And my dad said to me, there's this school in New York called the American Stanislavski Theater, and that is the system of acting that you probably should learn. It's like the most legitimate one. And so I went, and with my sister, actually, my sister Beth, who's also a local actress in Florida. We went, and we learned very quickly. And she immediately started putting my sister and me in her plays, and also my buddy Steve Marshall, who didn't become a professional actor, but at the time he was truly an inspiration to me because he was so good. That's how I became educated in art. Yeah, the defining moment was the introduction to the theater from my dad.
Yeah.
Because that opened my mind up to the many different facets of art. And I think if I hadn't had theater in my life, I wouldn't have known. My mind would have went somewhere else. I wasn't able to on my own realize that art was in many, many different forms.
Right.
And that storytelling was such an amazing part of such an amazing artistic endeavor.
Now, do you still draw?
I do. I doodle constantly like that. I constantly do.
Who is someone who inspires you?
Well, as far as artists or just in general? I mean,
just in general,
if we're talking about art, I'll just say there's a guy named Sankovitz who's amazing. There's a guy named David Mack who's amazing. There's a guy named, I could just...
You have a list, probably, of inspirational people.
Yeah, Jeff Deckel. I mean, there's guys that, as far as artists, people that can actually draw, with a pencil in their hand.
Yeah.
Or chalk or watercolors, or these guys are like the best of the best, and I'm fortunate to have to know them a little bit, not a lot, but and tell them how much I admire them, which is, I find to be extremely lucky to be able to tell these guys that I admire them. And so, as far as I have to say that some of my friends inspire me too. Like Ethan Hawke. Ethan Hawke. I'll talk about him. I'll talk about him in a very nice way because I love him and he's like my best friend, maybe one of them. And so I only have great things to say about him. But if I can, just for a moment, to speak about him as if I didn't know him, I think that this is a guy who, he's a guy's guy, which I like those kind of guys. But he's an artist, and he's a poet, and he's a musician, and he's a singer, and he is a father, and he is a husband, and he is a legitimate storyteller. He's many, many things. He can also watercolor. He can also sing a country and western song. It's like, this is guys like that. I know only a couple of guys like that, and a couple of girls like that in my life, who I look to for inspiration and as another artist, and they never fail me.
You guys have worked together on quite a few films.
Yeah, that's because we're buds.
Yeah.
We just like being around each other. We talk a few times a week, every week of our lives.
Yeah.
So it's like, and we always have a plan to do something, and most of it never works out, but occasionally it does,
Yeah.
We're always either going to do a play or a movie or this or that, and then, let's say there's 25 things we're going to do together, one of them ends up actually happening.
Right. Yeah. He and Chris are both in The Kid.
Correct, and so is my daughter.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Is there a disappointment that you faced at some point in your life that kind of still sticks with you?
I only get disappointed in people. I don't get disappointed in events.
Yeah.
Because I feel like they're not in my control. When I was a kid, when I was very young, I thought that, I got disappointed in life sometimes. But I as you get older, you realize that things are not in your control, and it's just, the world is not against you,
Yeah.
But I do get disappointed in people, and the problem with that is that it doesn't happen often, but when it does, it's extreme, and I wouldn't want to name names or anything like that.
Sure.
But there have been people that in my life that have truly disappointed me, just in a kind of human way.
Yeah.
And also these days we're living in such a complicated time right now, because ideology has become a way of life in such a divisive way. It's crazy, and so that that makes I'm sure I don't have to tell you there's so much disappointment around right now. But it's different when somebody close to you disappoints you, right?
Yes. Especially when if you hold someone, in a high regard because you've known them or you've known them for a really long time and they do something that just totally smashes you. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And then the idea is to then think so does that mean this person is now out of my life? Do I make that choice?
That's a huge decision. It really is.
Yeah, how do you dismiss another human being from your life? It's a weird thing. But some people's behavior is so bad that it shocks you. It's shocking.
Yeah. Sometimes you have to for your own sanity and your own health.
Yeah.
You have to do that. So.
Yeah, and for the protection of your family and others that are close to you.
Sure. Is there anyone you haven't worked with yet that you sort of have at the top of your list that you would like to work with?
There's so many.
Oh, sure. Well, the very top of your list.
Scorsese.
Yeah.
I used to want to work for Woody Allen, but I'm not sure that's going to happen anymore.
Yeah.
I've been very lucky to work with a lot of people. I always wanted to do a movie with Jessica Chastain since she started only a few years ago, but the minute she started becoming successful, I was like, I want to work with her. And
Yeah.
I just did. So it's like that was fun.
Yeah.
And we just did The Eyes of Tammy Faye together, where she played Tammy Faye and Andrew Garfield played Jim Baker, and I played Reverend Jerry Falwell. That was really fun.
I bet.
And there are Meryl Streep I've never worked with. I know these are probably very typical names that everybody says, but she's an incredible entity out there that I've never been able to exchange dialogue with while cameras rolling. That would be nice.
Yeah.
These days, there's so many incredible actresses that have kind of taken over these thoughts of who I want to work with these days.
Yeah.
I think P.T. Anderson, the director,
Mm-hmm.
I think, I'd like to work with him, I'd like to work with Wes Anderson as well. There's directors out there, there's youngish directors out there that I'd like to work with. But I think some of the best filmmakers around like that, I think P.T. Anderson is one of the best around right now. So as an actor, you just want to, of course, you want to work with the best out there,
Sure. What is a huge future goal that you have set for yourself?
Well, one is I want to make a movie that I'm happy with. I'd like to think of an idea, take it through development, and do the casting that I want, and put the team that I want together to make it, and have it turn out in a way that I'm happy. And so that's a huge goal for me. I don't see an end to that. Like, I don't see how that's going to happen. And so it's going to be a journey that I think I'm going to be on for a while. But it's a big thing to me right now. I know that there's, for some reason, stories are constantly on my mind. And, I go to bed every night, and, the prospects of some kind of story that I might think of as my head is on the pillow is great, and it's full, and there's lots of thoughts, and it's the way that things come to me. So I think that's a big goal for me right now. I think equal to that is to be good, to be a good father. That's like a big deal to me right now. That I have 3 different ages of children. 27. My daughter's 27. One of my sons is 20, and the youngest is 12. And to be the father that each of them need right now is quite a task, and I think it's a big goal for me to be. When I leave this earth, I want to have tried my hardest to be the best father I can be. And that's, I don't say that lightly. It's like a big deal for me. It's hard, It's hard. It's hard for people to be good mothers and good fathers and to know what you want to leave your children,
I think that's a fantastic goal. Absolutely. I love that. Yes, I do.
Well, it's a big deal. It's a big deal because, we make mistakes. And we learn, life is just a constant, trial and tribulation. And so it's like, you want to do the right thing. And I mean, the biggest thing that I've accomplished so far is that I think that they each know that I love them, and they each know that I love them in certain specific ways that are between whichever one and me, and very intimate, specific from the other ways. I think each of them knows that I love them, and I think that, and I know that they love me too. But it's the question of being a father, the question of being a parent, I should say.
Yeah.
And doing that, leaving the earth, knowing that you tried your hardest to do that right. It's a big thing.
Yeah.
And as when you become my age, it's like there's not a lot of other important things left, and that's one of them.
Yeah. I have a 15-year-old son. Right now, he's the smartest man on the planet, or so he thinks he is. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, but he's
Well, he'll learn.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like, oh, Mom. Yeah, silly Mom.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I get that from all of mine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I have a couple of just fun questions. First one is, what is your favorite type of cake?
Cake?
Yeah, cake.
Oh. Chocolate cake.
Oh.
With, if I can, I also like cheesecake. I don't like the two mixed. I don't like chocolate cheesecake. But I like just a regular kind of Italian cheesecake. And I like, something you buy fresh at a deli, at a cake shop.
Yeah.
Italian cake shop. And then I like chocolate cake. I like kind of creamy chocolate cake. I do. And I like, those are the two things. And, and then there's pie, of course, which I also like. The problem is that we don't get to eat cakes and pies very often.
Right.
That's the problem.
Yeah.
We don't I don't know about everybody else, but I don't go to a grocery store very often to get unless it's a holiday season, to get a pie or a cake.
Yeah.
Or unless you're at somebody's birthday party. I love birthday parties, especially children's birthday parties, because the cakes are always so good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have a huge
but
sweet tooth.
I like apple pie. I like apple pie a lot.
Yeah. Now, do you do warm apple pie?
Yes.
With ice cream?
Yes.
You do a la mode?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
If you're gonna do it, you got to do it all the way.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so you're a New York guy. I have to ask you the question that a lot of people want to know: who has the best pizza in New York?
Well, the problem with I can't actually answer that question. The problem is that I have friends.
Oh, okay.
Pizza parlors.
Yeah.
And
no free slices for you if you say the wrong name.
I have to bow out of that. Question.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
So I have one more question. I want to be respectful of your time. We've been talking for a while. I know you got stuff to do. Slim Bone Head Volt, your spoken word album.
Yeah.
Are you going to do another one of those, or is this a one-time thing, or?
No, we've done 2 so far. Probably do another one. I mean, they don't. They're really only for like charity stuff. But it's like, there's this woman, Dana Lynn, who is a New Yorker as well. She's an incredible musician and composer, and we met on during a play called Clive, which was an adaptation of Bertolt Brecht's play called Ball, and she did the Gaines brothers, and formed all this music, and I met Dana because she played all the instruments in that, and even part of the sets were actually instruments, and so that we had these giant doorways, these doorways as pieces, different doorways, and the doorways were actually instruments as well as doors, and so Dana played all them, so we got to know each other on that show, and she's also an incredible composer, and she travels the world doing different things. And so I started writing those fake journals and little stories during that play. I started writing them on my phone to keep morale up, just for fun. And the whole cast would share them and stuff like that. And then Dana wanted to put them to music, and so Dana and I started working together. And then I started doing these shows at Joe's Pub, which is attached to the Public Theater in Manhattan. And Joe's Pub just loved this show that I put on, and so that became a regular thing where we would sell out this Joe's Pub, and we would do these performances. And then Dana wanted to make an album with all these incredible New York jazz musicians and stuff. And so we made a first one, and then we have so much. I write them constantly because it's just to keep my mind busy. I write them all the time.
Right.
And I send them to her, and she just wants to make albums and compose music, and that's what she does. There is going to be another thing that happens with him, though. I just found out that I'm going to publish a book of them.
That's fun.
Well. So so that's in the process now too. That somebody wants to publish a bunch of them, and so I'm going to do that. We're actually figuring out the layout of the book and how it's going to look and stuff like that.
Oh, cool. All right, one last tidbit. What would be your final advice to anyone listening who's interested in acting or directing?
I think, just go out there and do it. I mean, give yourself a break. Don't judge yourself. Find the most interesting stories. If you're a director, it's a tough job, so make sure that, you're not doing it as just on a whim. Make sure that you're passionate about whatever it is you're about to try and get made. And the word passionate, I mean, it has to be something that you cannot stop yourself from doing. And then, there's a better chance that it'll actually get made. As far as actors, it's a tough job to try and have. Perseverance is everything. And just don't judge yourself, and understand that it takes perseverance. and there's a good chance with those two things you'll be able to, you might have a chance of getting in. It's tough, real tough.
Yeah. Perseverance. I love it. You have to. In this business, you definitely have to. You have to have it.
You have to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Vincent, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to me. I've had a blast. I've learned a lot. This is my audio class with Vincent D'Onofrio right here.
Well, thank you. Thank you for letting me do this. I appreciate it.
Oh, yeah, I appreciate your time very much. Enjoy your day off. Enjoy your classes tomorrow. That'll be fun.
Yeah. Stay in touch on Twitter, though.
I will do that.
Okay.
All right. Thank you so much.
Thanks.
All right.
Take care.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Big shout out to Kevin MacLeod over at Incompetech for our super slick theme song, Jet Fueled Vixen. And a big shout out to Michelle Lawson for our amazing disclaimer.